Hello, and welcome to another edition of Peninsula 24.
North Korea has had diplomatic isolation amid the strengthened sanctions from the global society, and it is expected to bring further turmoil inside North Korea. Along with the devastating flood that ravaged the north and toughened global sanctions, North Korean economy has gone through deepened economic difficulties. Moreover, the number of defections by the North Korean elites has shown a significant rise, which might be a sign of serious cracks within the regime. However, North Korea has had unofficial talks with the US and a third country and has maintained stable relations with China as well. On today's Peninsula 24, we discuss the situations inside North Korea amid the strengthened global sanctions and find proper measures to better cope with the ongoing North Korean issues in the near future.
For today's discussion, we have Professor Park Hwee-rhak from Kookmin University
Thanks for having me.
and Professor Sung-wook from Korea University
Thank you.
and Kwang-jin at the Institute for National Security Strategy. Let's first discuss about inside North Korea. On October 19th, the National Intelligence Service, NIS, have said that North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un seems to be going through health issues, and he seems to fear for his own safety.
독극물 탐지, 처리를 위한 장비를 해외에서 서둘러 도입하는 등 경호를 강화하고 있다고 합니다.
What do you think is the root causes that his sense of insecurity?
I think as we all know that Kim Jong-un purged and killed lots of officials, including his uncle, since his seizing of the power. I think that he may feel that there could be some kind of revenge or assassination attempts from the people within the inner circle and outside. So he may not be able to trust anyone. So he should feel insecure. And at the same time, even though he tried to demonstrate his strong will and the power to be the national leader in North Korea, but he's still 33 years old. So he does not have anyone reliable and depend upon. So it also contributes to his insecurity. And I would like to ask you to remember that I think U.S. government tried to find the characters of Kim Jong-un just after his seizing the power in 2012. And the government concluded that Kim Jong-un is unpredictable, dangerous, prone to violence, and have some delusion of grandeur. Based on that, I think that Kim Jong-un may be very unstable, sometimes could be very irrational. So that is the point that we need to worry about a lot, because he could make some irrational decisions.
Then Korea and the United States have mentioned decapitation operation targeting the North Korean leadership, including Kim Jong-un, several times. And the US has actually carried out a decapitation attack aimed at Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. What has North Korean leader Kim Jong-un responded to such a statement?
I think that Kim Jong-un is finding some strong hideouts to avoid that kind of decapitation operations. And it also contributes to the kind of distribution of his resources from the kind of military preparedness to consolidate his security. However, I think the peacetime decapitation operation is not easy. If we kill Kim Jong-un, the other guy would replace him. And if wartime comes, it would be the center of operations. I recommended in my paper that we can use this decapitation threat as a deterrent measures. If we threatened Kim Jong-un that if you use nuclear weapons to South Korea, our forces will definitely kill you in the first place. So it may dissuade Kim Jong-un not to use nuclear weapons. So the important thing is we need to strong will and capability to execute that operations whenever we think it is necessary.
I see. Professor Nam, according to the National Intelligence Service, NIS, Kim Jong-un has ordered 64 public executions this year, which have doubled in comparison to last year. Why do you think Kim Jong-un has strengthened his reign of terror?
My opinion is the history of the socialist country inherently history of the public execution. There were just so many cases in China and Russia. For example, the Stalin had executed so many Russian citizens, and Mao Zedong also executed the public place. However, North Korea is a unique case. It is amazing the number of the public execution is rapidly increasing this year. I think it's the evidence the North Korean regime is very unstable. 5 years have passed since the Kim Jong-un took grab of powers in the end of the 2011. He have to solve the two kind of problem. First problem is the economic problems. However, there are two kind of nuclear tests in this year. UN Security Council's the sanctions 270 has made the North Korean economy the worse than before last year. First case is the Kaesong Industrial Complex, the shutdowns. The North Korea has earned the maybe $10 million annually. Is the stopped it's the cash flows, the important cash flows to the 39 office of the Kim Jong-un secretaries. And another sanctions made the effect the arms import and export. North Korea also has suffered the shortage of the cash flows worldwide. And another problem is the external relations. Kim Jong-un had third generation leaderships. He wanted to visit the Beijings in order to have a summit with Xi Jinping. However, China leaders has not invited him because he's a young guy and he's unstable guy. China has still doubts he can control the Pyongyang regimes. And another, he have to solve the nuclear weapon with the Washington Obama government. And then relation with the South Korea also not so good. And therefore, he had to try two times the nuclear test. However, the high level of Pyongyang has a doubt to Kim Jong-un whether he can control the Pyongyang compared to the old father and grandfathers. And therefore, the many high-level technocrat and politician has adventurous comment and adventurous actions. And then he have to solve the challenge, and he's the only unique way is the public execution.
I see. Mr. Kim, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has made less public appearance this year in comparison to last year. He has made public appearances about 200 times back in 2013. But this year, he has made only about 100 times of a public appearance. And he is reportedly changing his scheduled public appearance frequently. Why is that? What do you think is the reason for the frequent changes?
I think it's because of the threat from the outside, warning from the outside of killing him, or decapitation operation, or preemptive strike. After the fifth nuclear test, there are more discussions and warnings from the outside that he'll be killed if he tries to use that nuclear weapon. So that is the main reason that he tries to hide, and also the frequency of his visits and public appearance, reduced this year. In the previous years, 200 times a year, or at least 150 times a year. But this year, only 100 times public. He made these appearances and digested the schedules. And we have 2 months left. And if he made visits 10 times a month, then we can see that 120 times public appearance and visits this year. This is the shrink of his activities, and the second reason for this is, I think, that he believes now that the succession procedure of power has soft landed, and he finally made a firm grip of power of North Korea. So that may be another reason that why he reduced his public appearances.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un showed up only 2 times in October. He seems to focus on taking care of the livelihoods of the public by providing field guidance at a soap factory and an eye hospital. Professor Nam, why do you think is the reason for Kim Jong-un's recent public appearances?
Kim Jong-un was disappeared as soon as the fifth nuclear test September lines, because there was a report then U.S. and South Korean forces tried the operation of execution to Kim Jong-un. I think he was very worried about the execution operation, and then he was suddenly disappeared. And then he tried to again the field visits. He chose the civil livelihood of the public persons. For example, the children care service and the non-military field visits. I think he separated the 2 kinds of strategy. First is the military field visit, and another strategy is the civil livelihood field visits. He wanted to show he is the presidency to the general peoples. He is very generous. He is very careful to the living of the public persons. However, he sometimes she showed the ability to execute the high-level persons in order to push down the challenge of the high-level person. I think he alternatively the field visit to the military place and the civil livelihood place. I think he chose the livelihood place in October. However, he showed to another military field visit in this month, November or December.
I see. Mr. Kim, 8 months have passed since the adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution 2270. All eyes are on the actual impact of the this newly implemented measures, as it is known as the strongest ever sanction against the North. How has been the responses from inside North Korea to the newly adopted resolution?
North Korea is calling that resolution illegal and one-sided, and also they are even mentioning about the suffocation of their life, and some media are saying that this sanction is unprecedented, strongest and longest. So there are reactions from North Korea that they are having very hard time these days. And also we are seeing the concrete number of the result of these sanctions. Some countries are kicking out ambassador or diplomatic persons, or some guys related to WMD proliferation and also sale. And also China is not that much active in implementing the sanctions, but still they are trying to show that they are serious. And also from in Great Britain, in England, they kicked out those reinsurance, representation there, and blocked some money. I think is around $5 million, and so we are seeing all these, implementation of sanctions in different places, and whether independent or just multilateral. And also North Korea is trying to find some exit from this. They try to send more people to Mongolia, and actually Mongolia is, there is the demand of, having some workers from outside for their, mining industry. So there are some, discussions between Mongolia and North Korea. And I think after the fifth nuclear test, new UN resolution, they are trying to, reduce the sending of North Korean workers to outside, including the mining industry and other logging industry. So we'll see whether, North Korea will succeed in sending more people to Mongolia for mining industry.
Okay. Professor Park, do you have anything else to add to these questions?
Yes, I think that we talked about the law of visibility of Kim Jong-un in the outside to the flooded area or to the military facilities. It may have something to do with sanctions. For example, he has to go to the remote place with car. It's very uncomfortable. The best way to go there is using the airplane, but it is not easy to get that kind of fuel for that airplane. So I think that low visibility also may stem from the kind of sanction.
I would like to add a comment. I visited the Dandong near the Yalu rivers last September. I visited the bridges between Siniju and Dandong. There was PM 10 o'clock. We saw that there are so many trucks carrying so many stuff and materials from Dandong to Siniju. I raised the question to my Chinese friends. It's kind of violation of economic sanction. However, Chinese friends answered to me, there were probably the high-level policy, low-level counter-policy. It's kind of the loopholes, the UN security sanctions. Mr. Kim told us that even if violation, we have to persuade China and Russia to sanctions more comprehensively, not exception. It is important for international society to accomplish the UN security sanctions.
Okay. Professor Nam, defection by North Korean elites and workers abroad have recently made a lot of headlines. Can it be translated as a sign of cracks inside North Korea and the Kim Jong-un regimes?
Yeah, we see the Tae Yong-ho, the ambassador of the London, UK. He fled the South Korea. We are surprised. Who was the Tae Yong-ho? Tae Yong-ho was explained the North Korean regime's the propaganda persons, and he is 주체 and the nuclear policy to the European society. However, he escaped the UK and North Korean embassy. It's kind of evidence the Pyongyang pressed the worldwide diplomats the North Korean embassy. I think the two kind of press. First is the cash flow more press the cash flow to the Pyongyang and the more unreasonable propaganda. We received the report of the UK newspaper. UK newspaper reported the region of the Taeyong was the capture of the nuclear weapon intelligence from the MI6, MI5, the UK intelligence agency. It is ridiculous for the North Korean vice ambassadors to have donated some cash to in exchange for the important intelligence. And another remaining reason is the education of his son and daughters, the diplomats. The son and daughter is almost the UK university students. They had the experience the capitalist democratic society atmosphere. He cannot accustomed to the Pyongyang pressed life, and then everybody parents the concerned the son and daughters the education and future life. His the last choice is to escape the Pyongyang.
Okay. Professor Park, North Korea is apparently pursuing military officers and soldiers with family members who have defected to South Korea. Why do you think the North Korean leadership has recently strengthened the control of the army?
I think that that could be one of the evidence of beginning of the disintegration of North Korea. Whether we don't know whether disintegration can reach to the regime collapse or not. At the same time that North Korean leader would see this is as a problem. So as you know, the military is the power base of the Communist Party. So he wanted to strengthen the integration of military as its powerhouse. And I think that the military also has some problem, I think. There could be some kind of food shortage and some kind of shortages of equipment and many supplies. That's why that there are many kind of soldiers who do not want to live in the North Korean army. I think that we should be very cautious, even though there is some disintegration of military forces, but there are huge numbers of military, so they are still impose lots of threat to South Korea. So we need to be prepared all the time, regardless of this kind of some bad signs to North Korea.
Okay. Do you think maintaining its pure and revolutionary military spirit can also be an effective way to control young soldiers who are known as the Jangmadang generation, which refer to younger generation in their 20s and 30s?
Actually, brainwashing of these people for their lifetime is one of the best way for North Korean regime to keep them under control and keep their revolutionary spirit. But the time now is different. We are having this Jangmadang generation in 20s and 30s who suffered the most and who experienced the arduous march period, the so-called arduous march period in North Korea. And they are having different ideas, and they have different experiences, and they spend the most hardest time in North Korea. So I don't think North Korean regime can control them with the same brainwashing and the same way of propaganda.
Right before the U.S. presidential election, U.S. and North Korea had an informal meeting in Malaysia. Is it okay to consider the meeting as an unofficial talk, commonly referred to as track 2? Who were the participants?
I think the most famous one is, as you know, the Galucci, who was the kind of who took the leading role in the 1994 agreed framework, which promised to provide 2 nuclear reactors instead of denuclearization of North Korea. And the North Korean side, the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, so many people says it is a track 2 meeting, but I think that it is a kind of 1.5 track, or I think that mostly track 1 dialogue. And that is very dangerous to South Korea, because if North Korea if U.S. is stick to the denuclearization of North Korea, the direct dialogue between North Korea and the United States could be acceptable to South Korea. But there is some kind of a risk that the U.S. may lower the goal from denuclearization to the kind of non-proliferation or the freezing of current nuclear weapons. So we are very worried about the dialogue, and I think that the new administration also may want to take a new step, which could be that freezing of nuclear weapons. And we need to be very prepared and analyze all the possible scenarios and kind of establish our solid policy lines toward the United States and at the same time North Korea.
Then what kind of agenda items were mainly discussed during the meeting, and what's the significance of the real informal talks?
Yes, according to the newspaper, I think they discussed on the possibility of the denuclearization. U.S. Said that they searched the possibility whether North Korea could go to the 9/11 appointment in 2005. That means that denuclearization of North Korea. But we did not heard anything about the North Koreans' position. But I think that it would be the kind of beginning of the kind of official dialogue between the United States and North Korea, which may kind of target the freezing of North Korean nuclear weapons. That means admitting or accepting the kind of 10 or 20 nuclear weapons for North Korea.
I see. Mr. Kim, North Korean nuclear experts who joined the informal meeting has emphasized that the partial progress made during the talks, and also mentioned that it can be led to an official dialogue between the 2 countries. What would be the hidden intention behind Washington and Pyongyang, and how has the Korean government viewed the current situation?
Actually, within few days, there will be the result of the presidential election in the United States. And those people who met in Malaysia, they know each other. They were involved in talks in the past. So I think before the result of the American presidential election, they want to meet and reaffirm or reconfirm the positions of each side, and whether they can, there's the possibility of resuming the dialogue for the resolution of the North Korea's nuclear problem. And I think they exchanged the ideas, and I don't think they focused on sanctions, more sanctions, or whatever military solution to this problem. They might have focused on resuming the dialogue. In that sense, North Korean guys, they said that there were some progress and good results of the dialogue, of the meeting, and maybe they might expect the dialogue, another dialogue, between North Korea and new United States, government administration. So in that sense, they might have tried to sense, whether they might be such kind of dialogue in the future. And from the United States side, I think they try to test whether North Koreans are ready. They are serious about solving this problem and what kind of concession they can accept. So this is a kind of meeting before the result of the United States presidential election.
Denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula has recently viewed with skepticism within the United States. Some people have said that it is a lost cause to try to get North Korea to surrender its nuclear weapons. And some of them even said that freezing of nuclear weapons might be a better solution. Of course, it is not yet an official stance of the US, but if such trends rises, it might provide a favorable condition only for North Korea as a result. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I totally agree with you. I think that is the course North Korea wants to have. If North Korea succeeds to have that kind of dialogue, they can say that North Korea would like to have only 20 nuclear weapons and promise not to develop more nuclear weapons and deceive U.S. and try to develop more and to have the capability to reach the United States. After that Malaysia meeting, Robert Gallucci said that North Korea could make 100 nuclear weapons until 2020 if there's no actions from the United States. That means that 20 nuclear weapons of North Korea would be better than 100 nuclear weapons of North Korea. It may be the kind of US's point, but 10 or even 1 nuclear weapons is enough to kill hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of people. So it is very dangerous. And I remember when I studied in the university about the US foreign policy, I heard that consistent inconsistency of the United States. The US changes the goals and policies all the time. I think that it is very dangerous to lower the goal from denuclearization of Korean Peninsula to freezing on the current nuclear weapons of North Korea. So I think that U.S. should think again, and it is very, very crucial to the security of South Korea as well as the United States and the world. So I think that we need to try not to lose the focus on the denuclearization.
I see. Professor Nam, following the informal talks between the US and North Korea, Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Liu Zhenmin visited North Korea on October 21st to discuss border issues. What's the significance of the recent visit from a senior Chinese diplomat?
Even though the China foreign minister representative announced it's kind of an annual visit, however, it has so many kind of important meanings that Liu Zhenmin, vice minister's visit to Pyongyang. The mission of him controlled the border issue between Pyongyang and Beijing, so almost 14 kilometers border lines between two countries. I think the China policy has the meaning that they stick to the two Korea policy in Korean Peninsula. It's kind of a status quo policy. Obama visits the Hiroshima, invitation of the Abe of Japanese Prime Ministers, the May 27th, and then the China Xi Jinping invites the Ri Su-yong, Foreign Minister of North Korea, and June once. Just 4 days have passed. The first meaning of the is kind of balance of power in East Asian international politics. Liu Jia-min want to strengthen the relation between two countries. Liu Jia-min has a prime responsibility to control the North Korean issues. The recent international geopolitics of the East Asian has the new cold area politics, and South Korea, Japan, and U.S. versus the China, Russia, and Pyongyang. Pyongyang enjoyed this situation, and then Pyongyang threat to the Beijings and one more nuclear test, and then invites the important VIP persons of China foreign affairs, Pyongyang, and they showed to the strong relationship between two countries. And then we have a difficult to handle the China and Pyongyang in current situations.
Mr. Kim, despite the strongest ever sanctions against the North since March, some people have pointed out that the actual pressure or backlash within the North Korea have been relatively small than expected. Beijing-Pyongyang trade volume has increased, and especially coal trade have even been vitalized. How much has North Korea benefited from the coal exporting to China?
Actually, North Korea's trade with the outside, with China, it takes 91%. So the dependence of North Korea's trade to China is, vital. So of their total trade volume, 91% with China. And out of that, from 40 to 50% is taken by the mining industry. I mean, coal and steel. It takes that part, that much. It means if China continue to buy from North Korea coal and these mining products, that means from 40 to 50% of the trade is not affected. And if China does not reduce trade volume with North Korea, that means that 91% of North Korea's trade is not affected. So if China does not change his attitude, and if China is not very much serious about the sanction, then I don't think we can succeed in sanctioning North Korea to make them abandon nuclear program. So it is very serious, and of course we are seeing the results of the sanction. We shut down Kaesong industrial complex, and because of that, North Korea cannot receive $100 million a year. And also many countries, even North Korea's allies, friends, they are trying to take part in sanctions more seriously. So we are seeing these concrete numbers and concrete results of the sanctions, but still it's not enough. And in North Korea, the price of the rice and the exchange rate is not that much fluctuating. It's not that much affected these days. So of course it's like a climate change for farming. The climate is changing, and it is affecting the farming. But still we need to wait and see more results of these sanctions in North Korea.
Okay. Professor Nam, Deputy Secretary of Anton Blinken has recently emphasized that China should strengthen its North Korean sanctions and cut coal imports from the North as well. Do you think it is right to make exemption for coal deliveries intended for livelihood purposes, just like China said?
I think it's kind of a double-sided aspect. Coal is basically civil items. however, both countries make use of the importing and exporting the coal and then make a huge amount of money. North Korean high-level technocrats make some money export to the Beijing. And another cause of the coal items is the very inexpensive price compared to the international price. And China wants to, as much as a lot of quantity of the coal from Pyongyang. As we see, the logistic cost is very low. It's almost 1,400 kilometers and the coal mining area is the border area. And the logistic cost is very too low. And then both countries have an advantage in exporting and importing coal and mining materials. Therefore, so, as Blinken said, is kind of the black hole, and we should not accept the coal item. However, my forecast is China do not accept the UN Security Council sanctions. Then my guess is the marginal line. And the coal mining and the oil export and import. Without the coal export and import and the oil support, Pyongyang will be a collapse in the near futures. Therefore, the Beijing's do not agree to the Blinken's argument.
I see. UN Security Council still has not announced a new resolution on North Korea sanctions, even about 60 days after the fifth nuclear test. Is it because of the different stance between Washington and Beijing on Pyongyang's foreign exchange earnings, including coal trade for livelihood purposes?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the U.S. May demand China to limit the trade for the livelihood purpose. China does not want to do that, so there's some kind of, I assume there's some kind of disagreement. I think that we need to recognize the reality that China does not want to impose any effective sanctions to North Korea. So if we have to rely on China, we don't make the sanctions work to limit the development of North Korean nuclear weapons. So I think that South Korea, US, Japan should, I think, to try to get together and come up with the new ideas how to effectively contain the North Korea in economically and militarily, to kind of prevent the further development of nuclear weapons. If we are united and do some effective actions, and China would follow, in order to prevent that kind of harsh restrictions, they would agree to the limits of trade, and they would agree some control of the livelihood purpose. So instead of asking China's help, I think that we need to make some kind of bold and powerful move, to induce the China to cooperate.
Well, Professor Park, I would like to go a little bit further on these issues. If it takes longer time to implement the additional North Korean sanctions after the provocations, the newly established sanction might be a less effective measure to deter North Korean nuclear development. What is your take on this?
I think that it may be about time for international society to question about the effectiveness of the United Nations system. Right now, China controls all the United Nations system because it has veto power. The reason international society gave the veto power to the 5 permanent members is that we trust them. They exercise that authority for the prosperity and peace of the world. But China uses that veto power for its own interest. So I think that all world society should question about the integrity of China and compare to behave as the responsible kind of power in the world. Without that kind of challenge, I think China would not cooperate.
I would like to one point of geopolitics in East Asia. New solutions on North Korean sanctions depend on the rival and race and struggle between Washington and Beijing. The new condition is the THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Defense Area Battery System. South Korea and US announced the deployment of the THAAD system in March or April. And China surprisingly and abruptly changed the attitude to the new sanction of North Korea, even if the sixth nuclear test in Pyongyang. I think the THAAD problem prevented the both country and the international society making a new solution in Pyongyang. Therefore, in order to make solutions, the United States and China had negotiated some geopolitics in East Asian societies. I think China have a very slow and attitude to the new solution. Even if the 2 months have passed, we do not concern the new solution has announced in this year. I think 2 months also have passed. Maybe next year we don't sure the new solution, and North Korea try to do another 6 or 7, 8 nuclear tests. Therefore, first, it is important for China and US also negotiate in East Asian geopolitics and frame. It is important. It's urgent issue.
Okay.
Let me add one more thing about the sanctions. I think that we experienced that. I think that the League of Nations before the World War II. League of Nations failed to prevent the World War II. So when we established the United Nations, UN, we gave the UNT authority to use the military power if there is some significant violations of the UN Charter. That is, I think you know, the Article 42, which means that the UN used the military means and ways to punish the violators. But I think that the UN is very reluctant to use that. If North Korea repeatedly violates UN sanctions all the time, what would be options of the UN? It is to depend on use on the 42 and use the Article 42. That if we do not want to use Article 42, North Korea will not cooperate. So I think that international society should discuss to come up with the kind of limited ways and means which kind of based on the Article 42.
On October 2nd, Korea resumed the talk with Japan on adopting a General Security of Military Information Agreement, GSOMIA. What kind of positive impact we can expect to see when we share military information with Japan?
I think we can benefit, positively from this, agreement. There were some allegations or some, words about, Japanese. Japan, had information about the fifth North Korea's nuclear test. They had that, information beforehand. But our government failed to get that. There were some this kind of allegations, and also United States, provided that information only to Japan. I'm not sure whether it's true or not. And also, I think Japanese, they have good technology and capability to detect, North Korea's missile tests or whatever. So I think we can benefit, more from this kind of agreement.
I see. We've focused on the situation inside North Korea along with the continuing global sanctions against the North. Lastly, where should the Korean government focus on the most in order to better deal with the North Korean issues? Please give us a short word of advice. Mr. Kim, first.
Actually, having a consistent policy toward North Korea is very important. We should not run a restaurant having different tastes. And another one is, we have the goal. We know where to reach. And to getting the answer 10, there are many different ways. We can add a 5 to 5, which might be easier, but we have another way of adding 10 ones to have, the answer 10. So we need to concentrate on what we can do. And there are things that we can do, more inflow of information into North Korea, saving more North Korean defectors. If we have 100,000, North Korean defectors, I don't think North Korean regime can stand that. So we need to concentrate on what we can do.
Okay. Professor Nam?
Well, it is time to call a spade a spade. The North Korea has said it become a nuclear state. It has matched its word with the actions. They tried the 5th time. Right now, North Korea is a nuclear state. However, some people has not believed the North Korea nuclear state. I think it is a critical times, the U.S. election and next year South Korea election. Therefore, for the first time, the bipartisan policy is most important in order to secure national security right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Park?
Yes, I think that we may be frogs in the kettle. We are adjusting ourselves to the changing North Korean threats. Instead of trying to denuclearize North Korea, we are in the process to adjust our objectives and goals, such as the freezing of North Korean nuclear weapons. I think it is very, very dangerous. I think the international society should demonstrate to the world people that we can solve this problem, and the UN should demonstrate its kind of a power to punish the member who does not comply with any UN Security Council resolutions. I think that it is very important for international society to prevent next war, which could be the nuclear war. And if we act early, we can prevent that war with less efforts. But if we delay that actions, we need to face the real war with lots of casualties.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your insightful opinion today here.